Hi there guys, welcome back to another episode of 4K Garage. So in this episode, it's a little bit different. I'm going to be fixing some paint on my dad's BMW X3. So a couple of weeks ago, he unfortunately made acquaintances with a small edge of a brick wall, and it just scratched the front bumper of the car. So the plan is in this episode is to sand back that area, fix it with some filler or whatever it needs, and then paint it, and hopefully you'll never know what happens. So let's have a look at the damage and tell you my game plan. Right, so here it is. So unfortunately, it's not massive, and the scratches aren't deep, but it is on this area. And for the most part, it's not going to be too tricky, as long as I keep myself away from that parking sensor. And it's just going to be... The only tricky area I can really see is coming back on this body line here, on the inside edge. You can't see it too well because they're black plastic with the dark blue metallic paint, but here is the damage. There we go. Once it's focused, you can see that a lot better. So like I said, the only area I think is going to be difficult is kind of up around this edge. This area I'm not too fussed about. I think that'd be fairly simple. It's just going to be a case of sanding only as much as I need to without making the area for primer and so on too large, because then as I spray paint and as I spray the clear coat, that's when the work area is going to get much larger. So that's the task at hand. Let's have a look at the tools I'm going to be using. So here we are, the tools I'm going to be using. Let's start off, so obviously various sandpapers. I've got everything from 80 grit, which I'm probably not going to be using, all the way up to I think 3000 grit in there. Various fillers. I've got normal body filler, I've got plastic filler, I've got knifing putty, masking tape of course. Now I've got this plastic Adhesion Aid paint here. I think I'm going to be using this just to avoid, in case there's any reactions with either of the fillers here. I'm going to use this before the primer. That should also just help it to adhere in the long term. And of course we've got some high build primer. We've got the colour matched paint. Let's have a look. There you go, C1M, that's the colour code there. So this is what I'm going to be using. That's just purchased online, of course. Put in the paint code and you get a nice colour matched paint can. Clear, got some product to just remove any wax and grease and dust and so on. And got some tack cloths. And of course, got a gas mask here, just because I don't want to be breathing all this crap in. There we go. So that's everything. I mean, the only thing really now is to start sanding back this damage. So let's crack on with that. Right, so I've roughly masked off the area that I'm going to be working with. Of course, I'm actually going to be working with a much smaller area in general, but I absolutely do not really want to go past these lines with any sandpaper whatsoever. I might have to up here a little bit, just as I blend the clear coat back in. But there's a body line here, you can see it coming off the arch there, follows all the way down there, and I don't really want to hit that with any sandpaper just in case I lose that body line. But I think this is a perfectly reasonable area. So now I'm going to start doing is probably take some low-ish, maybe 240 grit, maybe a little bit high. I think I have 320, that might be too gentle, but just need to start sanding back this area, working out if there's any low spots that are then going to need any filler, and go from there. So let's get out some elbow grease and start going at it. Right, so I've started sanding away at this, got some light on it as you can see, and it's very easy to see the low spots. So we've got some low spots here, where the plastic is actually deformed. You can see that little tiny bit of blue in the centre there. But what's clearly happened is the plastic is kind of deformed inwards. I left that a valley where you still got some colour. You still got some deep scratches, deep scratches, deep scratches, and some little chips on the edge as you can see, like there. There and there. I've gone over these now with 120 grit, 320 grit, and I think I might just start applying filler. I don't want to take away any more material. So we don't need a lot, really just need a little skim over, and that should bring those low spots back, but it's coming out somewhat all right. I must admit, I absolutely hate working with plastic bumpers. It just sands really badly. Much rather be working with, you know, metal or glass fibre, carbon fibre, something like that, but plastic, not my favourite. But let's crack on, continue, and probably start skimming over some filler. Got filler here. Let's just apply some light skims of it. What was meant to be a light skim turned pretty heavy, but that's all on there now. Hopefully all the little valleys are filled up and I can sand that back when it dries out.
In my mind, I slowly drifting by. All the poems I wrote for you, they made me blind, they made me lie. Heard you in the rain, will you always be there? Last thing you said, sorry if it's too late.
Right, and here we go. Here's the progress after sanding back the filler. So applied quite a thick layer of filler and sanded the whole majority of it back really. And as you can see, here's where we left when it comes to low spots. So we got some low spots there, a couple of deep scratches you can still see, deep scratch there. They've all taken the filler nicely. So I don't see the point in applying any more filler for now. What I'm going to be doing next is applying some of the Adhesion Aid that I showed you earlier, and some primer. And I'm going to prime the area, and that should show me up where any further low spots are. It's a little bit tricky to find them when it's kind of like this, so I'm going to do that. Give it a wipe down of any grease remover first, and then we'll start spraying. So let's crack in with that. Well, I've got the area masked off, roughly, and just going to give it one more wipe down of any wax and grease remover. And then I'm going to start spraying this Adhesion Aid. And then after that, once that's been given a moment to dry, I'll start applying some primer as well.
These skies and lips of fire and stars between these two worlds. You try to find your own. I try to run, try to hide. I needed to survive.
There we have it. So now I've just got to give that time to dry. It's quite thin stuff, so I just applied one coat there, otherwise it'll get loads of runs. Yeah, we'll apply some primer, and then we can have a look at where any more imperfections are. Right, so given the Adhesion Aid some time to dry, now it's time to apply some primer.
Sorry if it's too late.
So gave that a very, very light dusting and then built it up with a couple of thicker coats. You can already see some areas that you can still see some lines from the scratches, so that's good. Of course, that's exactly why I wanted to apply primer. So we'll leave that to dry, start sanding it back, and maybe even apply a second coat before paint. Right, so the primer's had all over and that's dry. And what I'm going to do before I remove any of the masking is just start sanding some of it with some 600 grit, get it nice and wet, make it nice and smooth. I want to do that before I remove any of the masking, just in case I need to add any tiny little bits of filler and primer over the top of that. So of course keeping the masking there saves putting it back on. Just start doing that. Right, it sounds very lightly, and I'm pretty pleased that there's no major areas that need any more filler. So I'm going to start taking off this masking. Right, and that's left me with some pretty gnarly big lines here. So what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start wet sanding the whole thing 600, but also feathering out this hard primer line. Also going to start very gently wet sanding some of the surrounding area, just so that when we come to blend in the paint and the clear coat, it has something to adhere to. Just beginning now. Right, so the area is basically ready for paint now. So what I've done is I've wet sanded the whole area with 600 grit. I've went around the area a little bit to feather out the primer line, and as you see I've burned through paint in a couple of spots. But it's no big deal, because when you come to paint you're going to be going around the primer line by a good inch, half an inch, something like that. And then I've also keyed up a lot of this area as well to receive some additional clear. And that way you can feather in the clear and you can make it a bit more seamless. So I've just kind of keyed up to around here, probably tape it off around here, up this line, and probably up here, down here, and so on. You wouldn't often use tape at this stage, because then you're just going to be left with some probably some lines of clear coat. The only problem with that is I just don't want the whole side of the car to get covered in clear. I'd rather control that overspray, as it would just get everywhere. So just going to apply a little bit of tape, a little bit of masking, and when it comes to clean up, I'll polish it out. There's a few spots on this plastic where some primer leaked in, so I need to polish it regardless. So it's not a big deal really. Right, here we are. It's not pretty, but I've got the area kind of masked up. Given myself quite a large work area to kind of, like I say, blend in that clear coat. So I'm going to just give it a wipe down with some Wax and Goose remover. Going to have to give it, another wipe down. Got tack cloths, and then I'm going to start off with the base colour, building up a thin coat first, probably a couple of thin coats, and then getting a little bit heavier, but not too heavy because it just risks getting runs in the paint, which just isn't worth it. Building up over and over and over. Probably after about 3 to 5 coats, I'll see how the colour matches, and if I'm happy with that, I'll give it a second to dry and then move on to the clear coat. So I'm going to stick it on a time lapse again. You're going to see me wipe down the area and start applying some colour. Right, here we go. So I'm just going to damp the floor, keep some dust from kicking up, and just like before, going to start off with some a couple of very, very light coats, just dust coats really, and then put on a couple of thick coats, give it a nice amount of material. If we need to buff anything back, it's got that there to fall back on. Right, and here we are. So you might have missed a step as things just got a little bit funny with the camera there. But basically I applied another thick layer of clear coat and it's come out all right. It's quite a lot of orange peel. That's something I need to address, as well as, of course, the obvious tape lines. You can see there the very obvious contrast between glossy and not so glossy. That's all things I accounted for. The tape lines, like I say, are kind of a necessary evil to avoid just getting the whole car covered in overspray. The colour match is good. Just a case of blending it all in with some wet sanding and buffing. So to do that, I've got a few grits. I've got, probably won't touch 800 grit, but I've got 1200 grit, 2000 grit, and then of course buffing compounds and all that. So really it's just, again, another load of elbow grease and it'll come out looking all right. Might time lapse some of it for you guys, but I'll show you the end result regardless. Let's get to it. Alright guys, here we go, it's all done, all polished up. Let's have a look at it. You can see the nice reflection there in the paint. And if we get in closer, you can hopefully see there's no more big horrible scratch. Still a bit of orange peel, as you can see. At the end of the day, orange peel is just kind of a thing with paint. If you really wanted to polish it out to a mirror finish, your paint would be incredibly thin, and it would just take incredible amounts of time and effort, which even at the factory they don't really go into. But I think that reflection there, as you can see, is pretty good. So I'm quite pleased with that. It's definitely not perfect, but for an amateur job, for like 50 quid in paint materials and so on, tape and cleaner and primer and clear coat, you know, can't go wrong really. And here we go, a little before and after shot. So before, and after. Alright guys, that's it for today's episode once again. Hope you enjoyed. Paint correction is one of those things that at some point, you know, as in owning a car and looking after a car, you'll probably have to do a little bit of it. Even if your car's a bit of a workhorse or a bit of a, you know, drift car, it's a bit rough around the edges and so on, you're probably still going to paint a spoiler or paint a splitter or paint some interior trim or anything like that. Or if you like to look after your car and you do unfortunately scratch it against the wall, scratch it against the curb, might be something you have to do in the future. So hopefully this video helped you out a little bit. If it did, as I always say, do the good YouTube stuff, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Until that time comes, have a good one, stay tuned for more. Cheers, bye bye.